friends, Mercedes here, and I'm going to talk to you guys about an awesome, rad, much needed company called Sheltered Co. Sheltered Co. was created by a mother for her autistic daughter. It's crocheted by hand in Los Angeles with dead stock fabric with no added fillers. This is a weighted blanket that helps children and adults regulate their body from stresses of everyday life. It also helps with better sleep, and you guys, it's gorgeous to look at and will make any room in your home look cozier and more comfortable. Please, if you're in the market for a weighted blanket, and even if you're not, but you need better sleep and to regulate your body or your child's body, please head over to shelteredco.com. Use the discount code LUCKYFEW15 for 15% off and purchase yourself a beautiful quality blanket.
Hey friends, welcome to another episode of the Lucky Few podcast, where we are shifting the narrative by shouting the worth of people with Down syndrome. This is Heather,
Mercedes,
and Micah.
And today we are joined by Ashley Barlow, who is an expert on IEPs and all things special education. This conversation is gold. I'm so grateful to have her on the show. She also happens to be a mother of a teen who has Down syndrome. So stick around for our conversation. We're grateful you're with us today. Welcome, friends, to the Lucky Few podcast. All right, you guys, Ashley Barlow, we just need to get to it. But before we get to Ashley, my conversation with her, which she's just such a boss when it comes to knowing everything about IEPs, let's just let our listeners know this good news. This is good news now, the beginning instead of at the end. And the good news is we are going to be at the DSDN Rockin' Moms Retreat. Sing it out. When is it
about Denver?
When is it happening?
September. Did you see how that rhymes?
Yeah. September 24th and 25th in Denver, Colorado. Holla. So if you're going, guess what? We are too. If you live in the Denver, Colorado area, come, let's see each other. Wouldn't that be fun?
That'd be so fun.
Yeah.
But we're going to be there together. We're going to be recording some episodes while we're there on site. And then we are going to have a booth and we would love to come meet you. So come say, hey, we are going to be selling a very small amount of narrative shifter sweatshirts. I think we have like 12. So
first come, first serve.
It is. We might, that whole idea of supply and demand, we might like have a bid.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
Hustle to the
$50
booth.
sweatshirts.
That's right.
Oh
$50 is actually what sweatshirts cost a lot.
They
of
really
places,
are. It's
You needed
kind of
to-
crazy.
What if that's what we're charging? Micah, you need it to be like $200.
$200, I mean, guys.
The bid starts at 50. No, what we do is like what boutiques do. You only put out one on a hanger on a rack.
Yes.
Just one little solo one.
Yeah.
One little thing.
You think it's the last one.
So if you're listening to this and then you come and you see one hanging out,
They went
you
with
know
my
the
idea.
secret.
That's right.
If you're there at DSDN, Rockin' Moms Retreat.
Rock Moms Retreat. Anyways, we're pumped to be there. I'm going to have my new book, Different, A Great Thing to Be, as well. I'll be signing that. So there you go. Before we start, listen to my conversation with Ashley. Merce, would you read a review?
A review. Neely Jade says, I tune in every week and it's like a nice chat with friends. There is a wide range of topics that help me to support my son with Down syndrome and stay up to date with what is going on with the Down syndrome community. Yay. Thank you for tuning in every week, Neely Jade. We love you and you are a friend.
You're our friend.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she'll be at the DSDN. I hope so.
Ooh, I hope so.
You should
And
come.
don't-
If not,
Oh, yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
Sign up. Don't forget to review the show on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts so we can read it out loud next week. We love reading these reviews and appreciate your support so much. Thank you, listeners.
All right, let's get to it. Here's my conversation with Ashley Barlow. All right, friends. Oh, I'm starting. Just so you know.
Let's go.
Okay. Okay, I am so excited to introduce you to today's guest, Ashley Barlow. All right, she is a graduate. She graduated magna cum laude from Miami University with a BS in German education, K-12. That's really exciting. She received her JD from Salmon P. Chase College of Law in 2006. In a former life, she was a German teacher in Jefferson County Public Schools and Cincinnati Public Schools, having taught nearly every grade from K through 12th. She also taught real estate and business law at Miami University. Her areas of practice now include special education, family law, estate planning, and probate. Basically, friends, she's here because I selfishly need her in my life for all these things. So hopefully the listeners can benefit from my selfish interview with Ashley. But there's more. Ashley is involved in her community through her service on the State Advisory Board for Exceptional Children in Kentucky, the National Down Syndrome Advocacy Coalition, and the National Down Syndrome Congress, and the Education Advisory Board and the Government Affairs Committee at the Down Syndrome Association of Greater Cincinnati. She practiced in the Institute of Special Education at William and Mary College of Law in 2016, returning for the alumni track in 2017 and serving as faculty in 2020. She also holds an advanced advocacy certificate from the Council of Parents, Attorneys, and Advocates. Ashley is involved with many other federal and state advocacy groups. Ashley practices statewide in Kentucky and Ohio, and when not working, she is normally at the pool with her husband and two sons, one of whom has Down syndrome. Friends, listeners, we are not messing around in today's episode. Welcome, Ashley Barlow. We're also going to call you the boss.
The boss. Oh no. Jack, my son that has Down syndrome, says that I am not the boss.
You are not the boss. Well, Jack, has he read your bio? I've got a bone to pick with Jack. Ashley, this is so fun. So the other thing that wasn't in that bio is that you also have a podcast. You host a podcast called Special Education Advocacy with Ashley Barlow. I had the honor and privilege of being a guest on your podcast, and I felt like I needed at least 5 more hours of just chatting and hanging out. You are doing so much in the world of Down syndrome and special education. And the thing that I really want to talk about today, which our listeners are asking about all the time, is IEPs. So listeners, we are going to get to that. We actually had a message in our inbox just a couple days ago from someone who said, I can't find an episode on IEPs. I'm starting my first IEP. I'm freaking out. What do I do? Right? I'm sure you get bombarded with that. This is my first IEP. What do I do? So we'll get there. But before we do, outside of that intro, tell us more about Ashley Barlow.
Well, thank you for having me, Heather. I'm sorry that I made you read that really long thing about me. And, I think that I love this question. Tell us more about me, because all of those things are certificates and meetings that I have to go to. But, ultimately, I'm a mom. I have a 14-year-old. I have 2 little boys, a 14-year-old, I guess not so little. And I have an 11-year-old. My 11-year-old is Jack. Jack has Down syndrome, and he's really, kind of the fuel and the passion that drives all of what I do at Ashley Barlow Company. I started this company about a year ago. We're coming up on our 1-year anniversary. And I did it for the reason that you just articulated. I was getting so many people that were calling me and saying, I can't afford an attorney. Thanks for the hour consult, but I can't afford to do anything further with you. And there's so many misconceptions and so many people going on the wrong path, or a path that is going to zap up all of their energy and still leave them frustrated. And so really what Ashley Barlow Company does is it provides much more reasonably priced and free resources to parents in special education. And I do that by way of a podcast. There's resources like downloadable PDFs and guides on my website. I have a 10 module video training course for parents that's really was born out of my own special education experience. I wanted somebody to just teach it to me. Teach it to me now. I need to learn this in a weekend because Friday was terrible. And I plan to be at the school on Monday morning. And I would like to know what I'm talking about. So really that's where the company came from. And it all came from a little boy named Jack.
Oh, I love that. So Jack's 11. Tell us about when you received his diagnosis.
So, I did not have the grieving process that I think a lot of people talk about, but it's probably more to do with two things. First of all, I'm a self advocate myself. I don't have a cognitive disability like Jack does. When I was 15 years old, I was in a gasoline explosion. My wave runner, like jet ski kind of thing, exploded. And I have 4 compression fractures in my back. And so I learned how to advocate for myself. I learned that kind of true grit and confidence that you have to have in yourself when you are different. And you, Heather, are doing such a fabulous job, particularly with your books. The children's book, Different, A Great Way to Be, is just so amazing.
Thank you.
And you're welcome. Thank you. And that is, that grit that I learned in that, I think has kind of driven my path. So I had a complicated pregnancy with Jack about monthly, maybe. I, kind of had a reminder of how precious pregnancy is. And the first time that I got one of those reminders, I remember my whole family was downstairs. We're Kentucky basketball fans, except my husband. And so my mom's one of 8. All of my aunts and uncles are in town. I was having the party. And I went upstairs to go to the bathroom and I was like, oh no. And I remember saying to God, I don't converse. I was brought up Catholic, so I don't converse with God very often. I pray, but not conversations. And I was like, I want this baby that's inside of me. And I think you're trying to tell me something, and I want this guy. And so when the doctor told me I wasn't even sutured, I have C-sections and I wasn't even sutured. And the doctor said, Ashley, I think he has the facial characteristics of a child with Down syndrome. He looks pretty healthy, but I think we should take him to the special care nursery to check him out. Almost verbatim. I think that's what he said.
Wow.
And I said, okay, well, what do we do next? And that's really kind of what I did. Of course, we have grieved along the way. We continue to grieve. We continue to lean into the struggles and the frustrations and the stress and all of the appointments and everything. But really, my dad said to me early on, you get that, I don't remember what it's all called, probably because it wasn't associated with a whole lot of trauma for me, but there's a triple screen no, I think that's the prenatal testing. Anyway, you get an early indicator and then a confirmation. And when I got the confirmation, my dad was in my bedroom and he said, here's the deal. Look at that baby right now. He was sleeping in a bassinet. And he said, that baby is perfectly fine. Yeah, we can't articulate how much more stressful life's going to be with him, how much more complicated, how much more involved life's going to be, different, right? But there's so much beauty in that difference. And if we just lean into the beauty that is Jack and look at him today and say, he is okay today and tomorrow's a new day, everything's going to be okay. So that's what we did.
Oh, that is so beautiful. Yes, and amen. And so you said after you found out, so what do we do next? That was what you said to the doctor?
Yes.
And it seems like that had so much to do with what you had been through. That idea of, okay, we can get stuck here in this moment of hard or unknown or confusing or whatever the feeling might be, or you can say what's next. And I think that's so interesting. I think that that's something you have to live through in order to be able to do. And my journey is so different, but even going through infertility before we said yes to adopting Macy, there was this journey of pain that I had to go through. And so when it came time to say yes to a little girl with Down syndrome, it was like, all right, now what? And that idea of, we have this day, this is what we have. And look at this miracle. Look at this human breathing breath in their lungs. Like, whoa, this is what we have today. So let's just be so thankful for this day. And obviously that's not to be foolish. not planning for the future, but it's such a, it was a lesson that I would not have been able to learn if I hadn't been through something that really challenged who I was and shaped who I was going to become. And I have found, and I'm wondering, I would like to know your thoughts on this too. I have found working with so many families who have kids with Down syndrome, a lot of times when the less struggle that someone's been through, the harder it is to accept that diagnosis. I have no science to back this, no studies, but I
Yeah.
think that's true for a Down syndrome diagnosis or anything that comes at you that's like the the stepping into a tension. If you've not really had to live in that tension before, it can feel extra weighty.
I agree. And I think COVID is another good example of
Mm,
that. We're probably all experiencing some kind of degree of trauma, or were, particularly during the significant shutdowns. And everybody coped with that so differently. But my husband's also had cancer after Jack was born. And so, like, we've had all kinds of, I call them just perspective shifting experiences.
yeah.
Um, and I mean, I think, my personal experiences, I literally woke up the morning after my accident and my mom, I was like 6 hours off the backboard. And my mom said, okay, here's the deal. You can be a victim or you can be a survivor. If
Wow.
you're a victim, you're going to probably drive everybody bonkers because you're going to complain. You might get addicted to pain pills. She drafted a pretty pragmatic speech about how life could go, or I could be a survivor and I could really learn from my experience and I could really push through, which is my personality anyway. And the piece that was missing in that statement was the we need to also grieve this. Like, I don't think that I allowed myself in my first traumatic experience to grieve and to really have the negative emotions. And it took me a long time to work through that. I continue to do that. Um, but yeah, I mean, I agree with you that if you've had a perspective shifting experience, it could be the loss of a family member, it could be a divorce. Um, you develop coping skills. But the beauty is, you don't want to go out and look for those things. So if your child is your first perspective shifting experience, you can decide right now. Here's the thing: is it's deliberate. That's what
Mm,
it all goes down to. It's
right.
deliberate. You can't, if you sit around and wallow. Yes, our lives are chaotic and crazy and stressful, and I wallow. But then you got to pick yourself up and make a plan.
Yes, which I think is a great segue into IEPs.
Right.
Depending on. So I would love to take a minute and talk about this because this episode's coming out right as people are heading back to school. We're recording this the first week of August. I know people are headed back now. The next month, I feel like through the first week of September, most schools in the United States are opening back up after a year of not being in school, which I would love to hear your thoughts on that too. And so everyone's in a different stage here. I know we have a lot of listeners with young kids whose kids are going at 3 years old. They're having their very first IEP meeting or transitioning into kinder for the first time with an option of and hoping for an inclusive education. And so let's talk about that. What would you say to parents who are at various stages in the education process? And then I've got some specific IEP questions.
Okay, I love it. So I came up with 3 tips. One tip, this is a side tip. It's not one of my 3, but it is if you are going to talk to people, your superintendent, for example, or your child's teacher, go in with a list, go in with an outline, because when you're talking about something that you care about, you'll go off topic. So I have a list. I implement my own strategy. And I have 3 kind of topics that you can use K to 12 and beyond. So the first one is kind of a pep talk, and it is, you can do this. So many of us, just what we were just talking about, Heather, are so intimidated by this. So here's the deal: is you have a superpower. My injury kind of gave me that grit and that superpower. And I always told myself, nobody else knows how hard this is for you. And so you're already in an advantage because you already have that grit. And that's what we learn as parents of kids with disabilities. We know our kids, we know how hard they work. we know their struggles. We know their social struggles, their academic struggles, their motor struggles, their language struggles. And we can tap into that because we have that connection as a parent or a guardian or a loved one. And so it really then becomes a privilege, right? Like we get to share our child with this team. And if we look at it as that, a gift, it's really great. So all the beauty, all the lessons, the struggles, the triumphs, we get to share all of that with our community. And that's what the IEP team is. It's a community. So that's literally all you're doing. It's just like what you do, Heather, shouting worth and shouting the celebrations and the triumphs. That's what we do in our IEP team. So that's number one. You can do this. And it's really something that if you're listening to the Lucky Few podcast, it's something that is preached to you every time a new episode drops. The second thing is, this is like the big tenant to Ashley Barlow Company. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Mm-hmm. So you're getting ready to start a school year. Hit the ground running. You know, clients come to me and they want to like jump right into inclusion. And I'm like, well, hang on, I got to know about your child first. I don't live with you. I don't know your child. You say Down syndrome. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means cognitive impairment. I don't know if that means like really strong visual profile. I don't know what that means. So I don't live with you. I need to know. Teachers don't live with you. So they don't know August. They don't know Jack. They don't know Macy. They don't know us. And so if we can communicate in the beginning, we create so much less work for the teacher so that they can hit the ground running, and that's better for our children. It also allows us to communicate in a way that we kind of set the tone for further communication. And, you know, it kind of expects a response back, which is nice because it's like, oh, I'm going to communicate with you. And we're already starting before the year starts. So you've probably seen some things about All About Me books online. I definitely would do an All About Me book that describes kind of your child's profile, like I just described, maybe interests, activities, things they like to do, medical stuff about like your team. You know, we always talk about grandma and our cousins and those people. Behavior tips and motivation. You know, a lot of people say, well, you know, they don't support my child behaviorally at school. And I'm like, well, did you tell them preemptively how you do it? You know, because that is a great way to get started. And so that's kind of a formal thing. I do it in PowerPoint. I've got some stuff on my website about it, but you can find it anywhere. And then also like a big back to school email might not be a bad idea. I send one, it's maybe a page if you were to print it out, but it's like updates from therapy, updates on medication, activities that we did, you know, kind of over the summer, that kind of stuff. The stuff that you might put into a journal entry that first week of school, you know, because so many of our children in Down syndrome, regardless of their age, and the Down syndrome community, we have a lot of children that can't really articulate what their experiences are, and that their aide or their teacher can't be like, oh, I know you went to Michigan this summer and that you went boating, if they don't know that. So if you communicate it, it can make a more vibrant educational experience for them. And for older kids, I think it's really fun when you can have your child present this or create it, or maybe even video them and send a 5-minute video to the teachers and be like, this is, you know, little Johnny talking about his summer experience, you know, so they can get involved in the self-advocacy as well. Of course, I would get your IEP binder updated. I would definitely set everything up to monitor progress at home, particularly this year after COVID. And then I have a little homework if this might intimidate you, and I'm sorry that it does, but it really does make a huge effort, a huge difference in advocacy. And that is if you really take some time to understand your child's profile and to really look at their progress monitoring data and their last evaluation so that you really understand what's going on. And if you don't, find somebody that can explain it to you, because there's so much to learn and you can make such a better IEP if you understand the data.
Okay. I love all of those things. I have a couple follow-up questions. I also have to say, if you're listening and feeling overwhelmed, me too. Because it's all, I say that it's all things that I can look at and see, oh, I can do all these things. Like all those things are very doable. but then I have to do them. And I feel like coming off of summer, I'm speaking to the people out there personality wise who are a little less listy, like a little less with lists and schedules and things like that. So I have to admit, going back into school, it's like this big plunge for me into like, all right, I've got to shift into this part of me that doesn't come naturally, and it always feels unfair for people like me.
It is well, I'm
Because
not,
it's,
yeah, I am not wired that way, but that's how I am as a grown up with a kid with a disability,
yeah,
busy
yeah,
life,
you
two
kind of have
jobs and
to.
whatnot. And so I'll tell you, I don't set a deadline for myself until Labor Day. So like I go 2.5 weeks of the school year without really doing a whole lot.
Yeah.
And then my goal is to get everything to them by the beginning of like the official year of,
Yeah.
of school.
When we used to all start school and when it wasn't 100 degrees outside.
Yes. Yes.
But that is so helpful. And I just wanted the listeners who are feeling overwhelmed by that to know you are not alone. We can do this. That's so great. I love the idea of making a video because I've got Macy going into junior high and having her make a little video for all her teachers. The monitoring progress at home. Do you have tools on your website to help parents monitor progress at home? Okay.
I do. And I oftentimes do a webinar on it as well. I talk about it in that parent training course. But yes. And ultimately what you want to do is, so here's how I do this in like very basic steps. I take the IEP, I write down all of Jack's goals. I stick that to my bulletin board in my kitchen. I then go into my supplies, all that stuff you buy at the Target dollar bin that you think, oh, maybe we'll use this.
Someday. Yeah.
Organize it now. It literally put on a movie. During a movie, you can do this entire process. You creative people. I can't watch movies because I'm too analytical for it. But so you go and you get the supplies to match each thing. If you've got a time goal, go get out your phone clock or make one, or find a website with a clock app that looks interesting. Go get your stuff. Make a target list if you need one. And then I do mine in Excel because I'm at my computer a lot. But you can just do this on a clipboard piece of paper, set it up so that when you're going to work with your child on goals. So like I take progress on Wednesdays usually because like that's not a very busy day in our lives. And then I just set it up like, okay, school's going to take progress on this every 2 weeks. So I'm going to take progress every 2 weeks. I make a calendar for the semester. And yes, I don't hit it every time, but I've got the stuff and I know how to do it, right?
Yeah.
So like I get the first grade sight words, I put them on the desk. That way we can flip through them once a week and I can see where he is. Mm-hmm. There's so much information that you learn by just going through their goals, even if you don't work on them, even if you only monitor progress.
Yeah. And I'll add to that because of the amount of times when I was teaching special education, and this was 13, 15 years ago. And it was a lot of, I think 15 years ago, there was a lot of there were goal banks, right? Like we didn't write goals 15 years ago that were specific to kids, which is still happening today. There's a lot of goal banks teachers are pulling from. And so there were a lot of times I felt parents were just like, sure, and didn't really know what the goal was. So I would just say to those of you listening, when you're going through the goals, if there's a goal that you're like, I don't totally understand what this is about or why we're doing it, bring that up to your team right away and just say, hey, I don't understand why these goals work for my kid. Can we rethink these? Because the goals need to serve your child. It's like the point of the goals.
I couldn't agree anymore. That's like my tip for writing. Some people have this acronym, SMART IEP goals and that stuff. I walk people through that, but ultimately what I say is think about how you're going to work on it at home. Yeah. Do you know how to monitor progress? Do you know what they're doing? And then like by monitoring progress, the easy example that I give is rote counting. So like Jack has apraxia of speech. And so when he was in kindergarten, he was supposed to rote count to 20. And so he would go 11, 12, 13, 13. Well, I went to them and it was a great thing to talk about, because their data was terrible on that. And I'm like, I actually think he knows how to do it. But 13, if you count, it eventually goes to urban teen, which is 17, and then a couple more, and then 20. So they go in order. He could pick them out like the numbers, the Arabic numbers, if that's what they're called, like the 1 and the 7 is 17. He could do those things. And I was like, I think he knows it. So I sent a little 2-minute video clip of us working a few times. And I was like, do you agree or do you not agree? And then we could have a discussion. Because the worst thing is a child that's doing the same thing over and over and over again, even though they know it, but they
Totally.
just can't express that they know it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And then they shut down. Definitely.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. The communicating, you said this about communicating with teachers. So I want to clarify this a little bit. So you had said to communication, before school starts, if you can get these things to their teachers. So a couple things with that, because then you also said a goal a couple weeks later, like by Labor Day weekend. Is that to like follow through with all of the progress? What are you talking about when you say that?
So I probably get my back to school email to school before the first day of school. Sometimes it is 9 o'clock the night before.
Okay.
But I probably get that email back. Now, in Jack's situation, he's still in elementary school. So these are all the same teachers, you know, his gen ed teacher changes, but they need to know, you know, about the trip to Michigan or whatever it is. And All About Me book, I don't think, you know, if you're feeling pressure, then give yourself a month to get it in there. Again, make yourself a nice cup of coffee, get a babysitter, schedule 2.5 hours. You'll get it done. It's not, if you're deliberate about it, you'll get it done. It's not really that difficult. And so, yeah, I mean, like ideally it would all go in before the school year starts so that they can hit the ground running, but give yourself some grace too. Nothing's perfect.
Okay. I've been doing with Macy as she's gotten older, an All About Me half sheet that's a little less childlike and just a picture of her with kind of bullet points, and then passing those out to the powers that be. So it's a little less, there's not as much visual
Yeah.
representation, but it's not for Macy, you know, it's for her educators and her peers more so.
I love that. And I continue, and you know, at her age, she might be starting to get interested in doing presentations. So you might turn it into a PowerPoint that she could present and do like a voiceover or something. That might be kind of fun. But then in addition to that, there's another strategy that I think is really great. And that is sending an email maybe every Sunday or every other Sunday or Friday that kind of explains like other outside of school experiences. Because again, like
Good.
Jack, if you ask Jack a question at school, he's going to say apple pie golf in response. You know, like he just makes stuff. I don't know what that means. We've bought him apple pie and he does like to golf, but he says apple pie golf. But if the teachers then know, no, I know you went putt-putting because I had a picture of you going putt-putting, they can actually use those pictures and make it make sense. So like we talk inclusion. So putt-putting has geometry in it. You know, everybody did that in 9th grade or wherever it is in your state. For me, it was 9th grade. So like maybe he's in math class and they pull up the picture of Jack doing putt-putt and say, see where it hits here? Oh, that's an uneven surface. It's going to bounce this way. Or I'm not going to know where it bounces. You know, so they can kind of draw on that. There's a thing that's too much, but I really think communicating a lot. And also just as another little side note, there's a lot when you communicate, a lot of your family's undercurrent comes up, your interest in your values and the way that you approach life, your narrative shifting can get in there. You can push really good, inclusive messages when you do that, because you're showing them at church, you're showing them on their soccer team, you're showing them cheering for their sister at a swim meet, and they like, and the school's like, oh, well, we would never send them to an assembly. Well, look at how well they did at the swim meet. You
That's
know,
great. That's good.
There's undercurrent too.
Yeah, that's smart. I like that. I feel like we need to respect your time here, and I've got a million more questions. So we're gonna do like speed round, IEP. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Private schools and IEPs. Can IEPs hold any clout in a private school?
If they don't take federal money, no, but the ADA protections still exist.
Ooh, explain that.
So there's really 3 main laws that may arguably 4 that protect children with disabilities. If you get the rights law book, I'm looking over my shoulder, like the main rights law book, Heather, I can get you the title and you can put it in the show notes.
Okay.
It explains this very well. But the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, does prohibit discrimination. For me, so you can look at those laws. But
Yeah. Okay.
for me, the bottom line is keeping it child centered. Is my child going to benefit from this environment? Does the school have the resources? Yes, maybe they will give them an education that isn't discriminatory, but will it be good?
Okay. Okay. And in that, does the ADA, do those laws protect or not protect, offer service? Like, is there services that can be offered? Can services be protected or not really? Like OT,
So
PT, speech, all this.
yes, and those are, I think, mainly provided under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. Now, those are not, there's no progress monitoring requirement, et cetera. But if a child needs, for example, physical therapy in order to access their education in a non-discriminatory way, then they have to get physical therapy under 504. If a child needs some reading intervention in order to access their education, then they should get that. And a lot of, particularly Catholic schools, have interventions, and they actually do keep data and that kind of stuff. They just aren't required to do it.
Okay. Okay. I would want to talk more about that, but this is the speed round. Next. This is a question we got from a handful of teachers. So special ed teachers specifically, best ways to support inclusive practices in schools that are pushing back. So to the special educator listening, just a couple, maybe foundational, you want inclusion to happen for your students, but this is not something the school is doing.
I think you can look at the model and you can see if you can use your model in the classroom. Far too often, teachers think that they have to teach in a self-contained room, but you can use your expertise and your strategies in an inclusive environment. So rather than the home base being the self-contained unit or self-contained classroom, think about the home base being the inclusion setting, the gen ed setting, and then pushing services into the gen ed setting, or even doing pull out, but doing less pull out while still utilizing the amazing skills and strategies and techniques that you have. So it's really just a little bit of a framework shift, a shift in environment. Another strategy that's really positive that somebody taught me was, rather than trying to cram inclusion down their throats, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Although I think it can be a sprint as an attorney, right? Like sometimes
Yes.
it has to be a sprint. And I've been successful in a lot of those sprints. But from a teacher's perspective, really celebrate the inclusive things. Make it known that you're the inclusion lady. Go to the school board when you see a child that just really got excited about an inclusive opportunity. Go to the school board when you have data. Go to your principal, go to your peers. Really cheerlead when you see it happening, and it'll snowball from there. If you bring people together, they will hop on your bus.
I love it. I love your positive vibe there. It's so good. Instead of fighting, let's rally.
Yeah, I can't help it.
When this brings into another question, least restrictive environment, LRE, it's law. Tell us more about least restrictive environment and how we can implement that. And I would say, keeping in mind that maybe even talking to the parent who is having their first IEP, so a younger parent.
Yep, that's who I was. And that's where this company was born out of. My district told me that Jack was not going to have a gen ed placement, and it all spiraled from there. And he does. And that was a sprint that felt like a marathon. So I have actually on my website a tool called an inclusion workshop. It has about an hour and a half of videos, and it has this really comprehensive workbook. And what I do is I take you through the law. So the law is that children with disabilities should be educated to the maximum extent possible with their non-disabled peers. That's all it says. Then the regulations, there are 3 or 4 regulations that have pretty much meet. They say that children should be educated in their home school. They say that children should have this continuum of placement options available to them. They say that before you go to the next placement option, you should layer on supplementary aids and services. Yes, an aide, a one-on-one teaching assistant, whatever you call them in your district, those people are supplementary aids and services. So when they say that's more restrictive, the answer is no, that's not true. And there are federal guidance documents that the Department of Education over the years has published that tease this out even further. So you get the law, you get the regulations, and then you get what the Department of Ed has said in these guidance documents. And so the Department of Ed has said things like, here are the factors that we should consider. We should consider the adverse effects on the child with the disability. We should discuss the effects, positive and negative, of the other children in the classroom. And there's lots of data that supports inclusion for the non-disabled peers. We should consider the educational outcomes, kind of across the board, et cetera, et cetera. And so if you look at it very systematically, it's a pretty easy argument, because you say, this is what the Department of Ed says we have to look at, and you just plug your child and your school situation into that thing. But if you don't have the time or the resources or the energy to do that, again, what I really, my kind of favorite strategy for this, I could talk on and on. I do in that work. But my number one strategy is, after you've had the discussion and you've gone through like what's in your soul and your brain, is to say, what's the schedule in gen ed? And to really plug your child into where it makes sense in gen ed. And then to say, okay, here's our goals, here's our minutes, here's what we need to do. How can we do some of this in the gen ed environment? Or what makes sense to do in a pull out resource intervention method? And then how can we make the rest of this work? And you look at the teacher schedules and the school schedule, you can't change all of third grade's lunch, for example. That doesn't work. But really, you kind of like look at it practically. And I think you'll be surprised, and definitely the school team will be more surprised at how much you can do in the classroom.
Yeah, that's really good. I think it was, even as a special education teacher, when I started going to IEPs on the other side of the table as the parent, that idea that the starting place is a gen ed setting. That's where we start. We don't start in a special ed setting. And how many schools you walk into, and that is the starting place is special education. And just as a parent to remember that, like, this is the starting point is gen ed, and let's make sure that everyone in the room knows that. And then let's scaffold and build from there,
Right.
and see what our kid needs.
And, that's exactly right. And there are so many different inclusion models. There's collaboration, there's reverse inclusion, there's all these different ideas within inclusion. So I also think it's important to get on board with what your definition of inclusion is, and to articulate that too. Like I don't want my child to ever leave the gen ed environment. Okay, well, that's totally different than Ashley Barlow's idea of inclusion, in a lot of cases. So
yeah, that's good. That's a good word. This will be our last IEP one, and it's kind of a bigger one too. There's like a 10,000 foot view here, but someone said, this is the quote from someone, I'm quoting them. What are schools hiding from parents?
Oh.
And I think the bigger topic here is, why is there such a disconnect from the schools and parents? And why does it feel that way when you're at an IEP meeting, that we're hiding things from each other and there's not unity and morale as a team? What's that all about?
I put on my rosy glasses. What are they hiding? They're hiding their interests. That's what negotiation is all about. This is all negotiation. And sometimes they don't want to say things because parents are in a protective mode themselves. There's no vulnerability. And that lack of vulnerability leads to egos getting in the way. If you don't get buy-in from the entire team, if you, let's say, you've got a middle schooler and you want to start working on a typing goal because that's going to become social because they're going to start to text. And the OT is like, well, we still need to work on pre-writing or something. Okay. And the parents are like, we're ready to move past writing because we aren't going to write or write well. So let's move on to typing. And nobody wants to address the conflict. Nobody wants to like hop on board, take a stance, and be like, I support this. Then what happens is the OT, finally the goal gets crammed down the OT's throat. And the OT almost kind of hopes that like it doesn't work because it's not her goal. So the OT is going to be like, Mom wanted us to work on typing. Here we are sitting here, doing typing. And look, we can't even find the A because we don't have visual perception, right?
Yes.
Because there isn't any buy-in. So what they're hiding is their interest. And your interest is the why behind how you feel. So not, I don't want to work on typing, but the OT might have like a whole textbook of pre-typing skills that she knows the child doesn't have, but that she doesn't feel comfortable sharing because of whatever reason. A lot of times they're hiding a money thing.
Yeah.
Like they know if in order to do this placement, they're going to have to hire another aide, another teacher, another support staff, somebody, and that's expensive. But my strategy, and this is where it comes to negotiation, is really to do interest-based negotiation and to really work on the communication and the relationships so that you can have those empathetic relationships amongst the people on the team. And this happens organically. It might take 2 or 3 years, but once you have that vibe, then your team is definitely going to start having that really effective conflict that's necessary in order to get back to your interests.
Mm-hmm.
So I think really what they're hiding, to kind of come back to the question, is the why behind all of their positions. Oh, and one more thing that they hide a lot, and I think it's important to know. They hide their insecurities about their teachers. They might have a teacher that's never, quote unquote, done inclusion. Again, whatever the definition is. They might have a teacher that they know is sick that they don't want to talk about. A teacher that's got like a crazy stressful thing going on at work or at home. And so like that's the inclusive teacher, but they don't want to layer on this, and this. It might be another child in a particular classroom. So sometimes the things that they can't divulge those things because of privacy.
Sure.
But it's important to know that that exists. And even if you get to the bottom of it by talking to other people, then you can work around those interests in your negotiation style.
Yeah. Yeah. That was such good information, Ashley. I want to reiterate that vulnerability piece. The IEP teams that have been the most unified and we have seen the most progress, where I have just felt like we are a team, is that vulnerability piece. And it took me to start it, like to say, this is how I'm feeling. And it's so vulnerable. Like, and even saying in an IEP meeting within the right context, with the right attitude and heart, like, I feel like you guys are hiding something from me. Like, that's a vulnerable thing to say, not accusatory, but like, I feel out of the loop. I'm feeling like you don't understand my child, or I'm feeling misunderstood. I think that opens up a door for teachers even to be like, oh, wait, you're human. I'm human, and reminding everybody at the table, I know and believe and trust everybody here wants what's best for Macy. I know that. That's why you're here. You guys are professionals. This is so much time and energy and work. Thank you for that. I know that's why we're here. So why can't we get past this thing? This is feeling confusing to me, like laying it out there instead of getting hard and cold and defensive. It has opened up so many opportunities to really get to creating a plan that works for the child, instead of this us versus them mentality that can happen.
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. There's a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. The author is Patrick Lencioni. And if you look at your team as a team and you think about it like in a work setting or some other professional setting, I think you'll have a good turnaround.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, there's so much more to talk about, but we have to wrap this conversation up. And I know that people are going to want to know more. So the last question is, I want you to tell us a little bit about your special education advocacy with Ashley Barlow podcast and your special education advocacy lab that you've got going on, and anything else that you're working on that people can come find you and dig deeper here?
Oh, well, thank you for letting me share. So, I would love to have your listeners join me. The podcast is Special Education Advocacy with Ashley Barlow. We cover lots of different topics. We had Heather on. So, sometimes we're, interviewing people that are really great at narrative shifting and the kind of human interest piece of advocacy. I've had people come on and talk about lots of different topics, like how to look at an evaluation. I had a school psychologist do that. We've done lots on behavior, lots on inclusion. I had Pete Wright on, and we kind of did like a rapid fire, lots of different topics stuff. So I invite you to join me there. The Special Education and Advocacy Lab is my parent training course. Again, it was born in my bed on a Friday night when my district said, well, I guess you got to file due process. And I was like, A, I don't know what that is. And B, I don't want to do that. And I thought that there should be more in the world about inclusion, and there wasn't. And I was like, how can if I can't find this as a former teacher and an attorney, it's got to be out there. Somebody's got to create it. So it's 10 videos. You can do it in about 6.5 hours. So one day or less than an hour a week. And you kind of go nuts and bolts. IEPS 101. So we started eligibility and evaluations. I have lots of advocacy tips along the way, like communication strategies and how to prepare for a meeting, step-by-step guides, that kind of thing. And really kind of the goal is to marry the legal framework with the interests and values of everybody at the table so that you can keep it very child-centered. So that is the lab. And I'm actually also working, Heather, I just mentioned this to you before we hit record, so I'll say it again, on something that I'm calling, advocacy, business, and substantive concepts. So it will be ABC, and that's the way it'll be branded, which are also my initials and Ashley Barlow Co.
I love it. You need to get that tattooed somewhere.
It's just, maybe I'll add it to a lucky few tattoo.
There you go.
But that'll be to train people to advocate in case they want to do that as a job. So more, parents are always saying to me, and I think to you also, like, I want to help other people do this. How would I get started? So that's it.
That's very cool. And tell us again, the website, where people headed for this.
AshleyBarlowCo.com. And that's also my handle on social media. So I put lots on Instagram, lots and lots of content on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Very cool. You're doing so much great work. And I hope that you'll come back someday on the podcast again and we can hit some more of these topics, because it's just imperative for our kiddos and their education and their.
I couldn't agree anymore, and I'd love to come back.
And thank you again for hanging out with us today. This was great.
Thank you. So fun.
All right, friends, this is a long episode. That was a lot of information. She just had so much gold. Yeah. So many good things to share. And I love her attitude and perspective. Was there anything that felt helpful or that stood out in the conversation that she had to talk about?
I like her. I just like that constant reminder that this is not, when we go into inclusion, even using that word, this is not a favor. We're not asking for a favor for our kids. It's their right. And it just makes me feel like as I continue, even in my homeschool journey, I have an IEP, Sunny gets a one-on-one aid, but as she gets older and I want her to experience more in-person class experiences like some of her peers get to do, that I can still use this information. It's a public charter school. So sometimes I forget that being a homeschool mom, I think it's all on my shoulders, but I have signed up with a charter and, I can go into it with the team aspect and still feel like it's both Sunny's right, so.
Yeah. Yeah. I like how she talked about least restrictive environment and really broke that down, and how it's like that is the law, and the starting place for that is a gen ed setting. And then you build up, like you scaffold up, and the starting point isn't special ed. We've talked about this, I feel like, a ton on the podcast, that special education isn't the starting point in a separate classroom.
Totally. How wild is it that it's still so prevalent though? It's not a
Yeah.
conversation that gets old.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think
It-
that's
it-
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not accepted is the reality. Like
Yeah.
most people as far as I can tell in education, don't accept that as truth.
Right.
You know, like that least restrictive should start in general ed. It
Mhm.
seems like everyone is like, well, of course you start in the special ed classroom.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I love too that she talked about one-on-ones not being a more restrictive thing. I don't know if you've been
Yes.
told that, but I've been told that numerous times. Like,
Oh.
one-on-one aid is considered more restrictive. And she's saying, no, one-on-one aids are a support service. So
Yes.
that is what is happening. You need support services in the classroom. That's what a one-on-one aid is. It is not a more restrictive option. And I love that a listener asked, like, what are educators hiding? That was such a bold question. And
Ooh.
Ashley's response was so helpful. It was helpful for me because I wonder that too, like, wait, why
Yes.
are we not talking about this? And that's a perfect example, the one-on-one aid, because it's going to cost more money, like
Yes.
that is one reason why that we might not be on the same page with the team, or why the team's kind of skirting around things, is because if that's agreed to, it's a significant amount of money too. I mean, it's an
Yeah.
entire job for somebody,
Right.
so that's just an interesting piece too. I don't know if I feel at the end of this episode like rejuvenated or overwhelmed.
Hmm.
Well, in fact, like it's how I feel about any, because this is kind of like a fight for a right. It's a
Mm.
fight. So that's exhausting and empowering, right? It's like,
Yeah.
yes, I have the tools. Okay, but am I ready to use them every single time I have to? I feel that same way, Heather. Empowered and know where to start.
Yeah. I think Oh, go ahead, Micah.
I was just going to say, I feel that like beginning of the school year itch, you know how you get kids in school and then you're like, what are we signing up for? And what
Mhm.
extracurriculars do they need to grow, and therapies and all those things. And I feel that like it's time for me to get some more tools in my
Mhm.
bucket. And, I was just looking at Cornerstone, where we interviewed Wendy Lacey a month or so ago about her program in Montclair, New Jersey.
Yeah.
And the lawyer there is doing like a series of IEP prep advocacy kind of classes. And I was signing up for that. But I'm also like, maybe I need to get on this advocacy lab with Ashley Barlow. Like I just am ready to like learn my stuff and feel more confident going into this.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, I think Ashley Barlow is a great option. She's got so much good material out there that's incredibly comprehensive. And so I'm grateful for her for that. I think she says we say this all the time. Mercedes, I think you say it's the most, but Ashley said in the interview, remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I was thinking about that more, and how I feel is I am sprinting a marathon. That's how it feels, right? Like I am on mile 22 and I have been sprinting for 22 miles and I can't make this 23rd mile. Like that's what it feels like. That feels like a more accurate analogy for it, because you can run a marathon, but you can't sprint a marathon. And I feel like we're sprinting a bleeping marathon. I almost said that word.
Woo! Then we would have a spicier episode.
We'd have to put an explicit. Anyway. I always want to like tie things in a nice, neat bow.
Yeah.
I know.
I don't have that today. Sorry, listeners. But I am thankful for Ashley Barlow. Thankful for the work she's doing and the insight that she has. Make sure you check out her website, everybody. Sign up for all her things.
Yeah.
And before we finish up our episode, we're going to hear from our sponsor, and then we're going to get to come back and have a little bit of good news.
All right, friends, I'm here to talk to you about Sheltered Co. It's a wonderful quality company that makes weighted blankets. It's the only crocheted weighted blanket on the market. Its sturdy pattern will last over time, and it gets better and better with time. It comes in 3 sizes to choose from, and new colors come out every month. This quality blanket was created by a mother who has an autistic daughter, and she knows the importance of regulating your body and the need for better sleep. So if you are in the market for a quality weighted blanket, please check out Sheltered Co. It's crocheted by hand in Los Angeles with dead stock fabric that has no added filler. So you can head over there now, use the discount code LUCKYFEW15 for 15% off. And you guys, you won't regret it. This blanket, I have 2 of them myself. I love them for me personally and for all of my kiddos. It does get better with time, softer, and it's so gorgeous and will make any room in your home look so comfy and cozy and beautiful. Head over to shelteredco.com, use the LUCKYFEW15 for 15% off, and grab yourself a blanket. You won't regret it.
All right, we're back, and it is time for some good news. Truly, take it away.
Time for good news, time for good news. Everybody, welcome to the good news. Yeah, yeah.
All right, ladies. I know our hearts and our minds are in the zone of IEPs. And so let's let the heavy part float away. And let's think about what we're thankful for this week, what we've been seeing that we're celebrating in the lives of our loved ones with Down syndrome. Anybody?
I have good news. Mason, yesterday was the first day to dress out for PE, and she did. And that was a big deal. Went in the locker room, got dressed, still not using a locker. And I think that I don't care if she uses a locker. It's been a point of stress in the last couple weeks. And yesterday was the first day. She dressed out. Get it, girl.
Yay.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well
So
done,
awesome.
Mace.
Good job, Macy Moo.
Sunny May, what is she up to? So you guys, she's had an eye issue for a long time. We kept going to the eye doctor about it, and the eye doctors were kind of perplexed. So they kept saying it's allergies. So they wanted to do another set of steroid eye drops, which we had done before, and it came back a week later. So then we went to a naturopath, and she thought that it's not allergies, but it's emotion related, that she's holding emotion in her eye, and that she's holding stress, and that's how it's coming out in her eye, because she's not able to use her throat chakra like she wants to. So she has frustration. She has so many things that she wants to say but isn't able to. And so we have sprayed for her now, and her eye, the chills is clearing up. Her eye is clearing up, and we almost did thyroid medication. We almost did another round of steroids.
I love anything where singing and drawing is the cure.
I know.
Good news.
Yeah. Okay, we also have good news from a listener at Mandy_Lee_Moss. Says, officially adopted my 12-month-old son yesterday after having fostered him since last August.
Aww.
Didn't set out to adopt a child with Down syndrome, but God knew how much we needed him.
Oh,
So
Good
cute.
news.
little
Congratulations
baby. Yes.
you guys, Mandy.
Congrats. Thanks for sharing that with us. That's awesome. And thanks for joining us today, friends. As always, we want to hear from you. So if you have some good news to share, you can leave us a voicemail. To get our phone number, go to the luckyfewpodcast.com. You can DM us on Instagram. You can tell us about your family and your good news about your loved one with Down syndrome. And if you have a product or business, you want to help us shout the worth of people with Down syndrome, we would love to partner with you. We are currently looking for new sponsors. You can email hello@theluckyfewpodcast.com for all sponsorship opportunities. A huge thank you to our editor, Josh Davis, our producer, Val Schleter, our sponsor, and all of you who have shared the Lucky Few podcast with friends and who have listened faithfully and continue to cheer us on. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. And remember, you, dear listener, supporting your loved one with Down syndrome, you are a shouter of worth and a narrative shifter. Keep on keeping on. We're cheering for you, and we can't wait to be together next week. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Last thing is we have a segment on our show we call Good News, and we ask parents to share some good news about their loved one with Down syndrome. It can be huge. It can be everything's huge. It can be they ate a salad all the way to they survived open heart surgery and anything in between or on either side of that. Do you have some good news?
I do. If you asked Jack what his good news was, about every day, Jack walks into my kitchen and says, "Good news, I'm moving out."
No way. He needs a good news button. We're going to send you one.
Oh my gosh, for sure. So he says it almost every day. He packs a suitcase and he's moving out. His plan is to go to various different homes, but that's what Jack would say. But I had one of those like hit the pause button moments yesterday. We had him home all year last year, even though he could have been in in-person school because of COVID. And, he's had some social anxiety. He's had some, some struggles as a result of that. And yesterday we were at the pool and two of his classmates were there. And for an entire cycle before adult swim, which is 45 minutes at our pool, they played. They played with this underwater torpedo thing. They played with a football. They wrestled like little boys do. And I thought, that's inclusion at play. That's why we do this. And moments like that, we get him a lot in his world. They just make me so proud of the work that I've done for him and ultimately so proud of his peers. He's just got great buddies.
I love it. I love that. That is some good news.